Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
KCG College of Technology is extremely happy in hosting this panel discussion via webinar on the topic COVID-19 implications and new strategies of the global higher education sector. We have four panelists, including from four different countries. Before I introduce them, may I have our principal, Dr. P. Prabhakaran? Here he is with us today. I invite him to say a few words.
Ah, okay. Thanks, Praveen. Indeed, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome the panelists for today's topic, that's implications, new strategies of the global higher education sector. For this, I'd like to welcome Ms. Andrea Mc Leod from Victoria University, New Zealand. I welcome Andrea. And Dr. Suriya Priya, National University of Singapore. I welcome Dr. Suriya for this webinar. I welcome Mr. Stephanie from Heriot-Watt University, UK. I welcome.
Thank you.
And I welcome Dr. Asad Ahmed from KCG College of Technology.
Thank you, sir.
Indeed, in fact, we all are actually presently under a pandemic situation at other locations across the globe. Being in the higher education sector, definitely we all will be facing some kind of challenges. Maybe the level may differ dealing with international students. And naturally, we need to find out with technology enabled to overcome this issue. So for this forum, and I welcome you all to kindly share the kind of challenges, that how you have planned your strategy, new strategy, so that we get adapted to the new normal situation. With these few words, I once again welcome all the panelists and the participants. And now I hand over the session to you. Thank you.
Before we continue, may I request Dr. Devasundari, Associate Dean, International Affairs and Corporate Endeavors, to say a few words.
Thanks, Praveen. It's my pleasure, since we have participants from across countries. It's my pleasure to introduce, to say a few words about our institute. KCG College of Technology was founded in the year 1998 to fulfill our founder chairman, Dr. KCG Verghese' vision of to make every man a success and no man a failure. We are a Christian minority institution affiliated to Anna University, which is in Chennai, India, and also approved by All India Council for Technical Education, New Delhi, India. We belong to the Hindustan Group of Institutions, which was founded in the year 1966 by late Dr. KCG Verghese. Hindustan Group includes several institutions unified by the founder's vision of imparting quality education in the field of engineering, aviation, applied sciences, and management. As such, KCG College offers 12 undergraduate programs and 4 PG programs. 5 of our UG programs is also accredited by National Board of Accreditation, and the college is also accredited by National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAC, with A+ grade. 5 of our departments have been approved as research centers by Anna University to offer the PhD programs. The college has been also accorded recognition as a scientific and industrial research organization by Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India. The college is also an affiliated training center for Skill Council for Green Jobs by the National Skill Development Corporation, Government of India. We are actually listed in the platinum category by AICTE and CAI, Confederation of Indian Industry, and we have been titled the Best Industry-Linked Technical Institute consecutively for the last 3 years. We are also listed among the top 10 Indian applicants for patents from institutes and universities. Our students continue to emerge as winners in various competitions in both co-curricular as well as extracurricular, which includes hackathons organized by Government of India. It is a prestigious Smart India Hackathon. Consecutively, we have been winning for the last 3 years, and we have been winning as emerging as winners in the various competitions run by various industries, both national as well as at the international level. with this few words, Praveen, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Before we get into the discussions, let me give a brief note, a brief introduction about all the four panelists. First, we have Ms. Stephanie Ashby. Ms. Stephanie Ashby is presently the Market Research and Analysis, is in the Market Research and Analysis Division, Heriot-Watt University, UK. Born in UK, she holds a degree in pure mathematics and computer programming from the University of Otago and an MBA from University of Durham. She is presently working for Heriot University as portfolio management and associate with the university for the past 15 years. Her responsibilities have covered the areas of admissions, recruitment, partnerships, and program portfolio development. Welcome, madam. Next, we shall have Ms. Andrea Mc Leod, International Regional Manager, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Ms. Andrea holds a master's degree in social science from Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology and a bachelor's degree in arts, international relations, peace and conflict studies from University of Queensland. She is responsible for marketing and recruitment activities for Victoria University of Wellington in India, including direct marketing, coordination with student agents, and counseling of prospective students. The next speaker we have is Dr. Suriya Priya. Dr. Suriya is an academician. She is an principal lecturer in the Institute of System Science, National University of Singapore. She has put in 21 years of teaching and consulting experience in the areas of software and data engineering. Her research areas include cloud native service design, test automation, and big data for analytics. She has worked with various consultancy firms and software firms such as IBM, Deutsche Bank, SCS, Singtel, etc., where her contribution involves planning, team leadership, requirements engineering, architecture, design and development, testing, pre-sales, delivery, and stakeholder management. We welcome you, ma'am. The next person is the son of the soil, Dr. Asad Ahmed. Dr. Asad is presently teaching in the Department of Aeronautical Engineering at KCG College of Technology. He received both his BE and PhD degree from Madras Institute of Technology, Anna University, Chennai, and his MS is from State University of New York at Buffalo, USA in 2007. His areas of interest include high-speed jets, aerodynamics, CFD, FEM, and UAVs. He is presently guiding a number of research scholars. With this introduction, let me move on to the questions. First, we'll hear from Stephanie. Madam, can you tell me what are the challenges and opportunities that students and academicians who are going to face in the post-pandemic situation? After this pandemic situation is over, what are the challenges and opportunities they're likely to face? Can you brief on that, ma'am?
Okay, I'm just going to try and share my screen and show a couple of slides on this. Can you see that okay? My name's Stephanie Ashby, and I work for the School of Social Sciences at Heriot-Watt University. And I'm talking to you today from Edinburgh, which is the city in the United Kingdom. Actually, it's in Scotland, which is part of the UK. And the question that you asked was, what are the challenges and opportunities that students and educators face post-pandemic? And I think there's a reason I'm qualified to address this topic. And that's because my university is known as a pioneer of education in the UK. Possibly the most relevant example of this is that Edinburgh Business School was the first business school in the world to launch an online MBA program. And the innovations in online technology are going to be vital in rising to the challenges that both students and institutions face over the next while. I thought it would be useful to start answering this question by looking at the size of the extent, the impact of the pandemic. And one of the World Bank blogs recently said that over 1.6 billion children and youth have been affected by this. And this number has been updated, it's higher now, and it doesn't include students that are studying at universities or other forms of tertiary education. Actually, numbers like that are scary. They've got scary implications. The virus has shut down the world's education system, and it leaves us in a very scary position. Actually, it's scary for students, but it's scary for those of us that are working in education institutions as well. It seems that one week we had plans to take forward over the next weeks and months, and in the next week, those plans had disintegrated. And the experts are a little divided on how long and the long-term effects that COVID-19 are going to have. Is it going to be with us for weeks? Is it going to be with us for months or years? How long must we maintain the social distancing? When can we reteach in classrooms, in lecture theatres, in laboratories, our libraries? It's very unclear, and it's very unsettling. And for students, this poses many challenges. First, they have to accept that the education world has changed, at least for the next academic cycle, though perhaps for much longer. And their carefully laid plans, they're going to have to rethink them through. And given the pandemic experts are unsure how long this will last, they may have to rethink them 2, 3 or more times. And human beings are very adaptable, but they don't like change, and particularly if that's forced upon them, and particularly our young people. And students are going to have to navigate through the uncertainty, and they're going to have to make new plans. They're going to have to decide where their future now lies, how, what is going to entail, where they'll study, how they'll study. And they need to find the drive to make these decisions. And they need to find the flexibility to change what they used to do, particularly if their previous choice preferences are no longer available. And they need to find the motivation. They need to find the motivation to push forward with new learning technologies and learning environments, circumstances and timings. And to do this, they're going to have to develop a flexible outlook. And many students these days don't have that at the moment. And they're going to have to do this because if we've learned one thing from COVID-19, the situation in one week is going to be very different from the situation in another week. And we can't really predict the path this is going to lead us. And similarly, universities are going to face challenges of their own during this time. They need to develop innovative learning solutions, not simply, to put a textbook or recorded lectures online, but they need to develop a fully interactive learning experience. And there are subjects for which this is simpler. Those are within my own school, for example, social sciences. It's easier to produce a blended learning platform, but it's going to take a lot more academic creativity for the hands-on subjects such as engineering. And universities can't do this by themselves. They will need to improve their partnerships, not only with other education providers, but with different technology providers, with network specialists, digital producers. And more than ever before, universities need to ensure inclusivity. Education can't be dependent on the level and quality of digital access. And universities are going to have to be aware of this when they're planning their teaching around COVID-19. And as they build student processes covering admissions and enrollment, teaching, assessment, which are adaptable and flexible enough to accommodate individual students' availabilities, their locations, their requirements, they also need to consider how to make welcome weeks, social events, graduations available to those who can't physically attend. And they need to ensure that facilities such as libraries and career offices and well-being facilities, and these are all available to students in whatever format necessary. And universities need to do this quickly. Most universities and colleges worldwide rely on student numbers directly or indirectly for financial income. And they can't compete in this pandemic world. Without money, they're going to find themselves closing. Yet as scary as all of this is, and as doom and gloom it may well sound, it's actually the start of a brave new world. See, universities traditionally are very slow to develop and implement new learning technologies and implement new pedagogical methodologies. And then they're now racing to do this. And some universities are having to start from scratch, and others, such as mine at Heriot-Watt, well, we already teach on a variety of different routes, and so it's much easier for us. The pandemic has given our academics and our faculty the opportunity to revitalize their educational approach rather than just their lecture content. And we're going to look better coming out of this pandemic than we were before. And this means that no matter how long this pandemic is with us, if it goes and returns, if it mutates, regardless, universities will be able to continue to train and teach. And they can reach students who weren't previously able to travel. And it may be that students who no longer can afford to travel because of the economic impact will still continue with their education. And as universities are no longer working in a vacuum, they can use their partnerships to make the content of the degrees more relevant to current employment needs. And students who meet the challenges posed by the pandemic and enroll during this period would have gained many vital skills, such as agility, problem-solving techniques, the ability to meet change, flexibility, and these are all key skills, but they're very hard to teach. And yet, they're skills that employers have been asking for years. And therefore, these are vital for success in the post-pandemic world. So while the pandemic, yes, it's been a global disaster, if students and institutions can meet these challenges, then there are a number of opportunities to take forward to better than before. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for briefing on how an interactive learning experience in an agile and flexible and adaptable environment will lead to a win-win situation. Thank you very much. Let us now move on to Ms. Andrea. Ms. Andrea, could you please, in your perspective, what is going to be the impact of COVID-19 in the higher education sector in the future?
Sure. Thank you, Praveen. Good evening, everyone, and vanakkam to those who are down in Chennai. My name is Andrea. I'm the International Regional Manager for Victoria University of Wellington, one of New Zealand's 8 universities. I am based permanently in Mumbai, so I've been visiting Chennai at least a few times a year for many years now. So today my topic is how COVID-19 will impact the higher education sector. And there's a number of ways to go about this, so I've divided it up into roughly 3 parts. The first part is, what will the effect be on the university sector? And this will cover some of the same material that Stephanie has spoken about. I think that we all have very similar thoughts on what the impacts are during the pandemic. So one point that Stephanie did mention is that many universities worldwide will be facing a budget crunch, as students who are expected to arrive for their mid-year intake have not been able to. So how this will impact the universities themselves will depend on which country they're located in. It will depend on whether they are a private university or a publicly funded university. It may mean that some of the smaller private institutions do not actually survive the pandemic. Many of these institutions are heavily reliant on international students to basically finance the running of the institution. Domestic student numbers, their enrollments, their financial contributions are also incredibly important in keeping universities up and running. So when you look at a public sector university, which is funded by the government, they do usually have far greater chances of doing well, of being able to overcome the financial constraints that are there due to a drop in student enrollment numbers, because there will be some type of a government bailout plan or a government support plan for the university sector in their countries. If I'm to talk about my university in particular, yes, we are expecting a deficit this year, because usually we have quite a large intake in July, but the university is expected to weather the storm, so to speak. They're putting in plans to ensure that we're doing cost saving where required, while ensuring that the quality of teaching is not compromised. So this is something that students in particular do need to take into consideration when they're looking at international education. They do need to look at the university that they've been considering and see how well that university has managed to come out of the pandemic. Have they had a major layoff of staff? Has the quality of their teaching been compromised in any way? Yep. The next point in which the effect on the university sector is that universities that have employed traditional teaching methods have had to evolve now. So online teaching is not something that all of us have universally done. Again, coming from a very different perspective from Stephanie, my university has not traditionally taught online. We had some classes, some programs that had online components and then block sessions where students would come in for a few days, but most of our teaching and learning experience was very much a in-campus learning experience where students were physically in the classrooms. So what we found is that it has been a matter of the university evolving. It has been a matter of our lecturers and our researchers evolving, and it's also been a matter of our students evolving. It's not just about the lecturers learning how to put up their slides on learning how to make that online experience interactive as well as educational. It's also about students adjusting to a certain mindset. And I know that many of the students have struggled to adjust at first. Online learning is not something that suits every student. Some people do well at it. Some people require that face-to-face interaction and that classroom time and being able to interact directly with their peers and trade ideas. So when lockdown happened in New Zealand, we had to swap everything to online, and it had to take place during a very short period of time. So there was a few weeks break. We had our Easter break, and after Easter break, everything was online after that. So we had to ensure there was sufficient support in place for students who were changing to online methods of teaching when it wasn't what they had signed up for. It wasn't just about moving the content online, it was about making sure that there was adequate academic and learning support services for students who might struggle with that transition. It was about ensuring that if students were really not able to cope up with that workload, that they could also drop a subject if they needed to in order to make it a bit easier for them. And I know that there were many challenges during that time that the support services had to deal with. So what we've seen is that the situation is constantly evolving. In January, February, even at the beginning of March, I don't think that any of us predicted that this would be the situation at the current time. We thought that COVID-19 might have a slight impact on the ability of students to arrive. We didn't believe we'd be going into these types of a lockdown until maybe around mid-March, when the reality suddenly hit. So what we've seen is the most important factor in universities' abilities to cope is flexibility. You might make plans this week and they might not be up to date, or they might not be what's needed next week when the situation evolves. So universities do need to be able to be flexible. They do need to be able to move quickly with changes, both to curriculum as well as to plans in market as well. So we've had to put in place, apart from academic changes, we've had to put in place changes around how students pay their fees if they're doing an online semester. Rather than paying for the entire year up front, they can now pay for just the subjects that they're doing online, which gives a greater sense of security to students who have had to take that route. You know, there's had to be hardship funds that are put in place for students who are struggling financially due to the lockdown. There's had to be changes to how we set out study plans and to the duration of programs. The reason this will continue to evolve is that we do not yet know when border restrictions will be lifted. So while many students, and as someone who's very much student facing, although I might be facing them through Zoom or through a telephone call at the moment rather than face to face, many of my students are extremely keen to come down as soon as possible, but there's that uncertainty in place about when that soon as possible will be. And that means that the students themselves have to be prepared to be patient. They have to be prepared to take a difficult decision about whether they want to start online or whether they want to wait. And that waiting could be 3 months, that waiting could be 6 or 9 months. It's difficult to give them reassurance, it's difficult to give them surety at the current time. While the situation has brought challenges, it is also an opportunity to look at the structures in place in our universities, to look at what we currently do, why we do it, and whether we could be doing it better. And I think that for a university like ours, which had never engaged in online teaching before now, it is an opportunity to look at our programs and say, all right, even if one day soon the pandemic is over, everyone can resume teaching and learning as normal in the classroom, are there some aspects of this that we would like to continue for students who want to study distance learning? And I certainly hope that we will be able to put that flexibility in place for students who want to take that option. I think that one other important aspect to discuss in terms of the effects on the university sector is how important it becomes for international universities to also have viable local partners in the countries that they work in and they recruit from. So for example, many universities may now be looking at articulation or twinning agreements with local universities and local colleges, which means that for bachelor's students, they can begin their degree in their country of residence. They can be studying for the first 1 or 2 years there, and then they're moving to an international university after that first year or after those first 2 years. And this means that for students who are not able to go overseas as planned to begin a bachelor's degree, they don't need to simply put off their study. They can start in their country of residence and they can travel down as and when they're able to when the situation improves. So what are the effects on the student experience been? Because I do very much see the overall student experience within a university as having an impact on the university themselves. So in most cases, yes, students seeking to study overseas are looking at a delay in their plans. They are having to make that decision now about whether they would like to study online or whether they would like to defer their studies. I think that the pandemic has also exposed the vulnerable position that many international students can be put in, particularly those who are unable to work part-time during the lockdowns. And we have seen some very sad stories from across the world about international students who did find themselves in financial difficulties when they were unable to access their part-time jobs. And I think that one very important consideration for students who are looking to study overseas is to look at how international students were supported by both host governments and by the universities in the country that that student is looking to study in. Because certainly some governments were much more supportive worldwide. They put plans into place to support international students alongside. Many universities created hardship funds that students could get financial support from if they'd lost their part-time jobs. Some countries had wage subsidies in place for international students who were unable to work, and some did not. So there's no guarantee that we won't see a second wave of this virus. I think that seeing the vulnerability of international students overseas, this is a very important point for students to consider, that if you are stuck overseas in a difficult situation, what will be the support available to you in the country that you've chosen or at the university that you've chosen. Yeah. And on the previous slide, I did already address that some students have struggled with adjusting to online learning while their universities were in lockdown, and they've needed additional academic support as a result. So what are the factors that students should take into consideration in making their international plan? So I think that there is a difference between both undergraduate and postgraduate students when it comes to this question. What I found is that undergraduate students, those planning for bachelor's, are less likely to choose to delay their plans. They do want to start as soon as possible. They are looking at online study, or they are looking at beginning in a university in their home country, rather than waiting to defer their offer to next year. The reason is that when you finish 12th grade, I think university is very much a rite of passage. When you're young, you don't necessarily want to waste any time in getting started. So these students are looking at options to get started as soon as possible. Postgraduate students are usually more willing to wait for the right opportunity and to delay their plans if they find that online learning is not a good option for them or is not what they're looking for. Postgraduate students are more likely to be working full-time, planning to take a break from work. Some of them may be about to finish their bachelor's degree, but they don't mind having half a year off or 1 year off before they start a master's. One important part about international education is that it's not all about just gaining the qualification. It's about the in-country experience. It's about the networks that you form while you're over there, which is why I found that many students have expressed a reluctance to begin online. Some of them are looking to defer rather than starting online here. They want to wait until next year if that's looking like a good option for them. Post-study work rights are also a very attractive reason why students choose to study internationally. The opportunity to stay back and to work there once they have finished their qualifications. And students do need to look very carefully at the rules of the countries that they're considering in whether they will still receive a post-study work visa if they have completed some or all of their qualification online. Again, this is not as likely to impact bachelor's degree students because their qualifications are longer. This is more a consideration for the postgraduate students. And the final consideration is that many, not only the universities themselves, many households have also been affected by either redundancies or reductions in income because of COVID-19. So for students, a return on investment for their education is a very important factor to consider, which again leads into whether they will receive a post-study work visa or not. It's in the end, the qualification is part of the reason they choose to study overseas, and the overall experience and the chance to stay back at work is another incredibly important part. And if they will miss out on that through online study, then it does lead to you could say, less of a willingness to begin in that medium. So these are the concerns that I've had expressed to me by the international students I've been dealing with. So that's it from me. Onwards to the next presenter.
Thank you, Ms. Andrea, for sharing your views. We understand that it's high time that the institute should operate on blended mode, following both traditional as well as online teaching. So thank you for your views. Now let's move on to Dr. Suriya. Dr. Suriya, being an academician, what do you say, in your perspective, is online education or is online teaching learning effective? Is it 100% effective? Number one. Number two, though terms like outcome-based education, Washington Accord are becoming very famous across the globe, how do people value an online degree in the international arena in the present? Could you please brief on that?
Thank you, the speaker. I hope I'm audible enough. If not, you got to let me know so that I could tweak my talking facilities. So, sorry, my speech is not going to be very organized like the other two, because I was doing something else and then I was just dragged in to speak yesterday night. So I just collected my thoughts, and here it is. Okay, so as usual, I would really appreciate if you have any questions that you can put it on the chat so that I'll be able to address them as I go along, because I do understand that we have faculty, students, as well as other kind of audience listening to us at the moment. So the question that was posed to me was online learning and how it changes the way that the education system works post the COVID pandemic. So in order for me to answer that, I thought I'll just think about the question first. So the question, as you can see, has two parts. How effective is online learning, and will it continue to persist post-pandemic? Is the degree earned online, actually it should be worth it, but since it was said, well worth it, I would take it as a future tense, you know. So, so these were the two questions posted to me to speak about. Okay, so it basically puts me into a lot of thinking, because for one, since the learning platform has changed a lot in the last 5 years, so it is not that universities are not looking into online courses delivery, or it is not that universities are looking into blended forms of learning. These kind of pedagogical issues have been always there. But what COVID did to the community is it sort of pushed us to the tipping point, if I would phrase it that way. So what challenges did it bring? You know, all of a sudden, I'm speaking from my experience. I work for the Institute of System Science, and what we do is a lot of technical education. Our participants are postgraduate students and plenty of working professionals who come in and then take executive courses with us. We also do post-graduation, specializing in software systems, data science, and knowledge engineering. So I've been handling a lot of techie classes for these communities. So I'm going to talk about the challenges I have faced in the last 2 months. So I'm speaking from Singapore. So Singapore went into a complete lockdown on April 4th. But we have gone into online learning on a staged fashion. So we did not wait for a sudden switchover. I'm not sure about other universities, at least NUS did it in a very staged way. So the first thing that we approached in the January was we segregated classes that were too big and a bit small to handle. So the first ones that were to go online were the lectures where we had participants more than 50. You know, so by end January we started segregating that, and then comes the challenge of arranging labs for them. So in February and in fact in March, we had the luxury of separating the learning streams into lectures and hands-on sessions. And hands-on sessions were split into further small groups so that we could have social distancing, mindful kind of interactions, because when it comes to technical courses like the one that I do in cloud, big data, etc., a lot of hands-on is necessary for us to sharpen the skills. It's not just the knowledge base. But so to speak, the whole world comes to a standstill, and then there was a day that was put as cutoff. We only had like a few days to get used to the switchover, and then we had to go completely online. And I just finished my semester, so I would say that I've been handling like 3 or 4 classes in parallel, and then a lot of um, teaching assistants, co-lecturers, and people who helped us to work in groups, who also aided us in this journey. So the challenges were multifold, you know. So it was not just that I was able to simply change the learning style, improve the pedagogy, and work for it. So the challenges was twofold: one for the teaching team which was dealing with it, and then the next one is for the students team who were observing it, you know. So it started from making a conducive environment at home for everybody to teach as well as learn. So that was the biggest challenge, because many of us share or co-share living spaces. The second thing was the whole schedule had to take a complete, we had to take a step back and then reflect on how we wanted the schedules to work out. Video was one very key form for us to keep people engaged in the assignment. Of course, we had a lot of interesting tools. We started out with Zoom and our own internal learning environment portal, which was quite helpful for us to do a lot of administrative tracking, interaction, submissions, and other kind of any kind of classroom management activities that you would expect to. But what was interesting is the way that we wanted to assess students. So we had difficulty finding individual assessments and group assessments and clear demarcation of how we want to do that. One thing that was very tricky for us is we are more a case-driven learning system, whereby our blended learning comes from industry experience. So the kind of case studies that we discuss in the classroom are industry case studies. So you can see that we are not core pure academicians. We go into the industry, we consult, we work for consulting firms, we collect consultants' experience, and we come back and create learning experiences for the candidates and the executives that we are trying to train. So a very simple academic assignment like a quiz or a coding assignment will not suffice the kind of experience learning that we are looking into. So that was our major challenge. Of course, we experimented a lot of online learning tools. Some of them to mention is Microsoft Team. We also used Google Classroom, Google Documents, and Google whiteboarding tools. We used Zoom, as I mentioned earlier, and our own internal learning platforms. And what was interesting as outcomes from these assignments is we have a technical excellence team who constantly help us with the knowledge transfer. So there were knowledge transfer sessions among staff members. There were knowledge transfer sessions among students. So there are a lot of interesting things that we learned. If I sit back and reflect how my last 3 months has changed my life, one thing is I didn't have any concept of free time. I thought the work was like elastic, you know, it was filling all the wake up hours. That part was a bit tiring, but if you look at the way that we have put up things, we have changed around, and then the way that we look at how the new norm is going to be, that's pretty amazing. So there are a lot of interesting experiences. So having said that, now that we have known that this has worked to some extent, I wouldn't say that it's 100% replacement for having a person-to-person session. We even had discussions post-exams, and we were trying to see how students were doing. There are a few interesting observations that we came along. Normally, if you look at the mark distribution, by and large, it is normal distributions, you know. So why this happens is because beyond what is being taught in the class, beyond what the teaching assistants are able to help us with, beyond the lab sessions and the experience and the practical sessions that has happened to prone the skills, knowledge transfer happens very, very easily among peers. So this was something that was very challenging for us to do in particularly completely new enrollment batches. For example, if we had a second year student coming in, he already had made friends, he had a social living, he understands how to communicate and get things done as a team. But for other part of the learning parcel, like for example, students who are completely new batch, they were sort of taken to a standstill. So I did hear some international students coming and telling me that the moment they landed down, they were put into student dormitories, and after that they never went out. All they have been doing is online learning. So it was very challenging for them to socialize, make team. So that kind of learning part, which is the very special thing about face-to-face learning, is completely missing. And that is why we realize that the outcomes of the assessments and the learning experience is very divided. I would say it's a binomial curve, so there's either you do it or you don't. So students who can manage get to do a good portion of it, and then students who get left out seems to be a larger cloud as well. So I thought there are some things that I've seen as successful traits on students. Since a lot of students are listening to me now, I thought I'll put some of these things as food for thought for these students if you are thinking about or preparing for online studies going forward. One thing is each course format is very, very different, because the ratio in which the knowledge and skill is divided is completely different for different subjects. Then you have to test yourself if you're capable for this online learning experience, because it requires a lot of self-discipline. And you can see that organizations these days are conducting a lot of orientation programs which can help you to cope up with this kind of online education. So look forward to it and participate in it actively, so that you sort of familiarize yourself with the process. You don't have to have both the learning as well as the process familiarity burden you together. So you should take time to prepare for such kind of orientation. And definitely there is a lot of learning management systems each company or organization is going to hold. This kind of online learning holds good even if you go for workplaces. I do hear from my Singapore counterparts who are working in the industry, as well as my Indian counterparts, telling me that there is no way they're going to have a full-fledged 100% workforce coming back to all these kind of open office environments as usually. So even for the graduating students, it's going to be a challenge for them to go back to work life and then get oriented to. So online learning is going to be part of your life from now on. Whether you do it for a degree or you do it for your one learning curve, or you do it for only one project, it all depends, but it is going to stay forever. Okay? So that's my understanding of how things has changed. So it is very important for you to socialize and bring in a digital presence. So I've seen students creating online presence like avatars, personalizations, blogs that gets them to socialize, break the ice, form teams to go through this learning journey together. And of course, it's very important to keep up schedules and other things, so those are the other small advisories I thought I'll put in. Now, second, the challenge is for the staff who are listening to me and the organizations which are trying to look at building these kind of online resources, okay, to keep them up. So one thing is you have to strategize depending on the core subject that you teach. So we, for example, work in 3 camps. The kind of strategies that work for data science camp doesn't work for our intelligent systems camp. The ones that work for software engineering camp or software systems camp doesn't work for data science camp. So we had to figure it out. Our challenges were grading systems, assessments, the way that we had to break down our experience for learning. We were not confined to 6.5 hours of learning hours. We sort of split them. So timetables got elongated. We have to be ready for that. And we had to double up our capacity for teaching as well. So there was a lot of things. Feedback was another important pointer. So we were not waiting for, usually at the end of the semester, we collect feedback and we reflect. That luxury is gone. With all the online systems, we had a lot of probing happening now and then to make sure that the learning was happening at the right pace. There were a lot of help and support systems that come from peers as well as students. They were active students that were helping us to get a better pedagogy engagement in the university. So there's a lot of lessons that we learned, the students had to change themselves and learn. And as an organization, as our teaching excellence team has looked into all these things, we are also collecting a lot of wisdom. So what are the new paths that companies have to look for? So we have to alter the way that we package our curriculum. So our institute, for example, we are going into certificate model where we are trying to modularize things a lot. And this modularization packaging, we are trying to see how we best suit it for face-to-face and how we best suit it for online. So we are trying to have a bi-pronged strategy there. And also, we want to look at it as from a strategical perspective as well. So we are looking at it from 5 years, 3 years, this year, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of changed targets. We have a lot of changed audience support as well. There were a lot of pleasant experiences whereby every student were telling us that they got the first desk kind of experience when we started sharing everything on the screen, including slides, coding, and so on and so forth. There were also a lot of other good sweet spots on the learning, like students were very happy that they could replay the codes. They could build it iteratively. They had a lot of stopgap arrangements. So these were very appreciative on their part. But also the challenges or the difficulties come from the peer-to-peer learning not being so conducive. It was very difficult for them to completely social on a virtual environment. Introverts were doing okay, extroverts were finding it extremely difficult, and ambiverts, I think they are here to stay as well. So that's a different story. So we had a lot of refining of strategy and so on and so forth. So I've been rattling a lot about my own experiences teaching these kind of online courses for the past 7 or 8 minutes. So as a concluding remark, what I would like to put here is one thing, online learning is going to be here for stay. But do you have to look at degree options? That is interesting. That depends on what you are looking at it as an outcome. If you want a complete knowledge plus skill experience packaged, I think the best that you can go for today is to enroll for a degree, whether overseas or national. You are going to look at virtual options and e-learning as well as online learning forums for that. So that's my answer for whether the degree is worth it or not. So the degree motivation is completely different. So it's a well-packaged experience, and it is also a per se credibility to say that you have experienced yourself through certain kind of assignments and projects and internship experiences. Whatever knowledge that you have received, you're basically able to build it and present it. So these days people don't just write resumes, they build GitHub showcases, they build projects, they build prototypes, they do design walkthroughs. So most of it is by demonstration and showcasing. So these are very good facts about degree. If not for degree, what are the other alternative options that you're looking at? You can look at small skill certifications and so on and so forth. Those are very helpful for on-job work, but it is not for your portfolio. Okay? So is online learning going to continue after this pandemic? Definitely yes. There are multiple forms of it. It is not a binary yes. I have to qualify the answer with a lot of additional attributes. So when you choose an organization, the organization's ability to blend these kind of learning experiences matter. Their efficiency, their credibility, they're able to do this in the past matters. And this is from the organization and the staff point of view. From the student point of view, if you are getting ready for an online learning experience, there are a lot of characteristics and traits that you're expected to have. Otherwise, you're not prepared enough for the experience. So this includes self-discipline, being digital, and then trying to have virtual socializing skills amidst many others that are required for you to go through the learning experience. And for the degree part, yes, it is useful if you're looking at it as a wholesome portfolio in your CV. Otherwise, it's going to be a very small capsule modules that's going to help you in the work life if you want to start work life fast. So that's my take and opinion. If you have any other questions to ask, I'm open for it. And thank you for listening.
That was interesting listening to you, Dr. Suriya. As you said, I understand that we are ending up in a binormal curve. You cannot skip face-to-face learning completely. At the
Yes.
same time, be prepared to.
We were really surprised to see that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there are certain things that cannot be short-circuited, particularly on the experience part and the skill transfer part. Knowledge, of course, can be very easily conveyed on the concepts, on the discussions. But when it comes to the real skill imparting, I think face-to-face is going to stay. So the success factor comes from how skillful the university or the organization is ready for it to bring it inside the blended pedagogy. So that one we have to see how it goes forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
we
you.
shall now listen to Dr. Asad. Dr. Asad, can you brief on this, how this technological, social, and pedagogical issues could be resolved for online teaching, particularly for postgraduate education? I think most of the listeners here are undergraduate students who are waiting to pursue a career in premier institutes, for their postgraduate degree. Could you brief on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, so the topic which is given to me is about the issues. So I'm Dr. Asad from KCG College of Technology, who's hosting the session, and from Chennai, India, of course. So I'm going to talk in context of Indian context for the how the technology, social, pedagogical issues could be resolved for online teaching. So this will be the outline of my presentation. So of my talk, like will just overview the online teaching first, and then we'll move on to the technological issues, and then the social issues, and finally the pedagogical issues. So as has been discussed so far by most of the speakers, Ms. Andrea and Dr. Suriya as well, regarding the online mode of teaching, I'll just recall certain aspects. So this online mode of teaching is not something completely new. In fact, when I was doing my master's back in 2005, that time itself, they had an online teaching, like online degree was offered even in 2005 in Sunny Buffalo, and online teaching was being done there. Probably the bandwidth was not as good as it is now. So probably the thing was done using online, but using offline videos. So anyway, so this as far as Indian context is concerned, we are usually known only these three modes of teaching: full-time, part-time, and distance learning. So this online be the fourth mode of teaching. As told by other speakers as well, the physical interaction is very minimal in this online mode of teaching, and that could be one of the issues, main issues for any kind of teaching learning process. And but unlike the distant learning mode, there is obviously going to be some kind of interaction is going to be happening. Obviously the interaction is going to be in a very distant this one, but it's going to be happening. The cost of learning is of course one of the major factor which people always try to tell when you talk about online mode of teaching, that it could bring down the cost very big, and this could be an issue from Indian context, especially for those who are going for an overseas education, etc. So as our KCG college has also done, like we have undergone a lot of online webinars and even online courses through Coursera and other online learning platforms. So this has increased our knowledge, and obviously it has helped us to learn from very different and distant and knowledgeable sources. Probably sitting here in Chennai from a distant or even may not even be in Chennai, maybe in some remote place, you can learn from a professor in MIT or a Harvard University. It's possible using online, which is not possible probably in any other mode due to cost issues, or it could be due to any other issues. So US education, UK education, Europe education, which is more sought after, could be possible at fraction of cost. I think Stephanie or Andrea told about training program. It could be possible that a university, US university could tie up, or a UK university could tie up with a local college or a university here, and they could be offering courses. This could be happening. So this is another possibility. So another thing is that the difficult concepts can be learned from the best sources. So this is a win-win situation for even faculty as well as for the students. So the concepts which may not be possible to learn in you have choice. Like they said, now we are spoiled for choice. Like we have an amazing level of choices available, and we could choose whichever we wish to. So just I will continue a few more points regarding this online mode of teaching before we go on to the issues. So as has been pointed out, the peer learning is something very important, which is in fact myself or anybody can who has done a degree will relate to, is very important in any degree program. So peer learning is very difficult in online mode. Obviously you can chat, but it's nothing like a social like real time when you, because it goes beyond just talking or asking one question like what is this. Probably you go for a tea or a coffee, or you make a bonding, and it goes beyond. Sometimes most of the friendship that you make in your college life goes till the end of your career. So that kind of a social networking or even a normal networking is something which will be missing in this online mode of teaching. So practical courses, obviously it's a very big issue. Skill is obviously like Dr. Suriya pointed out, is something which is very difficult to add on from online mode of teaching. So online mode of teaching is very difficult to get your skill based courses. In fact, for a course which I teach, like an aeronautical engineering, it's almost impossible to teach online. You cannot teach a practical jet engine or let's say an aerodynamics in online. So it's something which is completely ruled out. So obviously those are the limitations you have in the online mode. Then the other thing is the paper. Once you start using like a mobile phone or a laptop or a digital mode, it's very difficult to go back to paper-based learning. So people may not even be taking printouts because they may not necessarily due to the cost as such, but the people will be reluctant. I mean, generally when people are made to sit down, they usually do not start working out. They just simply decide that let's just learn it everything online, and they don't go beyond probably what is given to them in teach. And obviously, as you know, even in the paper base, most of the students as a faculty, I can tell, is when we give a note, people want to go as less as possible. So when you give them a choice, like you want to take it online, they will not go beyond online. They will not refer a library or a textbook or prescribe them, and that it may be limited. They may be limited. So now let's go to the technological issues. This is purely from Indian context. It could be applied to many other countries as well, but mostly the students are having smartphones, but connectivity is an issue. So this is also was pointed out in one of the articles that I read in a newspaper, that connectivity in remote areas is a big issue, even for premier institutes. Even in premier institutes, people may have smartphones, but they may not have a laptop or a desktop. So laptop or a desktop is obviously a better platform or a better tool than a mobile phone, which has its own limitations. So that is one issue. And then the connectivity. Connectivity may not be constant. It may not be available throughout 24 hours. It may not be constant. And broadband may not be available in many places. And even if it's available, it may be unstable. Electricity is another issue. In Indian context, 24 hours electricity is not possible, and even it's not available in many places, and sometimes electricity itself is not there in some places. So that's again another issue as far as online teaching is concerned. Another thing is English is not a native language in of course in India and many of the other countries. So most of them, the students learn English in college. So if you are going to bring this online mode of teaching, of course, we are not talking about a full-fledged online degree. Even a post-graduation degree, or even when you have even a little bit of online, it takes away the learning point, that you will not be able to learn English, which you usually do in college. Most of them learn English in their college days, in Indian context at least. So fast internet connection is another issue, which is another technological issue. So let's move on to the next issues, so which is the social issues, like already which has been discussed. Once you start, rightly pointed out by Dr. Suriya regarding the introverts like online, extroverts like offline, like a direct learning. So that is a very interesting point she brought forth, which is what I'm going to try to tell here also. Those who are introverts will probably not find much different when learning online or studying face to face, because for them anyway they're not talking like they're not in usually they're not talk much. But for an extrovert, it's always a difficult issue because they're used to having people around them. But that's a big drawback as far as online learning is concerned. The social issues is it will not improve your interpersonal skills, your team skills, and those skills which are very important for your personality development, or even for when you go to a job environment. If you do not, like I always tell my students, like if you do not develop your skills in college, you're not going to develop in your workplace. Because college is the place where you develop your skill set as much as you can, because the people are there to teach you, the people want you to learn. So that needs to be done. So online learning, the social issues, this is one very important point. Peer learning, as I've already pointed out, may not happen as much in online as it is done in offline, direct face-to-face. Students from villages, this point is also very important, like village people or even from remote areas or not from city bred, or online mode will not help them to improve their mode of communication skills, and even develop projects. Probably they will give up faster. Even in our normal face-to-face setup, when we have a teaching, the normal people who do not talk much give up the degree, like they drop out very fast compared to from others. So the online, maybe the dropout rates will be more. So of course we are not telling it will not it completely online, but still in some context it will affect this as well. So physical or social connect will not be there for even faculty, because faculty usually does not teach all the concepts in the class. The contact hours is usually 45 hours for a class and 45 hours in a semester, but many of the concepts are taught beyond those 45 hours. It is usually done in beyond that 45 hours. That is when you talk to students in this one, like beyond the online this one. The next one is attention span required for learning may be more. So the attention span which is required during online, you will, as rightly pointed out, Dr. Suriya, you will require to learn, you need to spend more time. Like when you're doing online, you need to spend much more time. Your hours may not be 6 hours, it will go beyond 8 hours, 9 hours. So that's another issue. Cost of learning is again maybe low, but the cost of setup, especially for an Indian context, you have to have a broadband connection, you have to have a like a printer should be there, you should have a very high-end laptops, or you should have a setup, which is also another issue in social context. The next is the pedagogical issues. So pedagogical issues, if you see, is the one big thing is the online examination. From Indian point of view, we are usually used to learning by like we have a descriptive type of question answers, and 80% of our evaluation or assessment is done using a 3-hour examination. So this sudden switch over to an online examination will be a shock, and will be difficult for students as well as for faculty as well as for the whole community, because even for the school learning as well, we always have learning in the last, like we have the practice of having most of our assessment is done in the last 3 hours. So online examination cannot be, is obviously is going to be like a continuous assessment, so that is an issue which will be difficult. Maybe for an autonomous institutes it will be nice, but especially for affiliated institutes, the pedagogical issues will, the online examination issue will be a big one. Another will be it's online teaching may not be as effective. Like if you see the traditional mode, as I've already discussed, it's very easy. You can have an instant clarification, and you can have a direct face-to-face contact. Any issues, bright students will directly go on. Even the slow learners will be able to get the through peer learning, they will be able to solve the issue. But in online, this may not be happening. So that's again one big problem. The project is again a project mode of learning. Whenever you want to do a project, usually it is done using peer method. So you are given a big project, you probably do the project, you interact with your peers, and probably even beyond, even you will go to the other branches. Probably a mechanical engineer student will go to an electrical engineering student, and electrical will go to a computer science engineering student, and they will get, so these things will be an issue in an online mode. And obviously everybody agrees online will not completely replace, as I said, a full-time, part-time, distance learning. Online is not going to be one separate mode. It only is going to be complementing, maybe 25% online or 30% online, maybe there. So what the COVID-19 has done is it has forced us to go to the online mode, because something is better than nothing. Probably if you're not going to use online mode, you do not have any other mode of teaching available to the faculty and the students. So as I've already pointed out, the last point is the branches like mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, online mode of teaching, especially for laboratory courses, even for problem-oriented or derivation-oriented courses, will be a very big challenge. So with this, I will conclude with a positive remark. Like this is a statement which we usually heard many times. The Uber, the world's largest taxi company, does not own any vehicle. Facebook, which is the biggest media owner or has the content, does not create any content. It depends on others. Alibaba, the most valuable retailer, does not have any inventory. Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, does not own any real estate. So just I know it's completely overboard. I mean, it's very early to talk about it. But is it possible that world's largest university does not have any campus, or we have sky campuses? So with this, I would like to conclude, and
Thank you, Dr. Asad. Can we go for questions? Are there any questions? The panelists may answer the questions.
Hi, this is Dr. Kala here. I would like a question to Suriya from NUS. Could you please tell us about this online assessment? How is it done? Like, how do you assess various from students to student? How is it done? Any opinion about it?
Hi. See, for us, it's a mixed assignment. We don't go by one single assignment. We already have a way of doing it. We call it as continuous assessment, and it's done in different points throughout the semester. But what changed with online is we sort of rephrased a lot of our projects, where There is more team contribution, whereby they are forced to collaborate and submit a wholesome project. See, I don't know if at an aeronautics department like Azad was saying can do that, but we being the digital platform owners, we teach everything on the cloud. So it was very easy for us to transform the real classroom projects, including our IoT devices and sensor-based project, into team-based, individualized, component-oriented, continuous assessment form. But when it comes to examination, there was a different set of challenge for us. Examination was designed for individual assessment, right? So we had to use proctoring methods, new way of proctoring methods. We usually allow them for open book exams. That's NUS, particularly Institute of System Science way of doing things. So this time we allowed them to use the digital platform as well. The setting up of exam was much different experience, because we give them Google, but we do not want the answer to be available in Google. So you can imagine how challenging it is to come up with an assignment like that. So we had to sweat blood. That's the simplest way of putting it, but we were able to do it. And surprisingly, there were students who shun very well. That's why I was talking about the binomial curves. So those who are able to discipline themselves to go through this CA assignment and learning experience that was designed using this kind of online blended teaching were able to survive much better in the exams. And as I mentioned, it was all case study based exams. We used video proctoring. We used our own learning management tool to time the submissions. We also sort of restricted the number of utilities that are allowed to them at any point on time. And we also timed the exam. So this is how we managed it. But I have to tell you that the person power, I don't like to use the word manpower, because we have a better woman force workforce now, right? So normally when the exam happens, we will say use equal amount of administrative staff as well as teaching staff involved in the examination process. This time my observation is the administrative support was increased twofold, threefold. Because we had to individually group them into 15 so that it's easy for us to do video proctoring. So for a class of 80, we basically had to split them into 5 online boardrooms and ask them to do the exams. So this is how we did it.
Fine, thank you.
Sorry for long-winded, but it's a big experience, so I had to, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question from Mr. Prabhu. He asks, what sort of pedagogy can be used to approach derivation and problematic subjects through online mode? Any one of you can answer, any one of the panelists.
Yeah, like I would like to answer. Like it's an issue which I brought up even in my presentation. So online mode of learning, when you go for the derivations or problems, these kind of things, obviously it's an issue. Like you can use it like we were discussing in for FDP that we are doing, that you can use a paper mode, like you can or a stylus pen, and you can try to do the derivation in a stylus pen, and you do it in your iPad or like your tablet. So you try to write down the derivation, which is like you use your normal pen, and it probably you explain as you go along, just like how you use a blackboard. So that's a possibility. But that's what I was bringing the issue of, like when you get stuck, or when you have like something to be clarified, it's much more difficult than in a blackboard mode of teaching. In the like stylus pen, or in your tab, you have tabletop, when you do it using a paper mode also, it's much more difficult to do it using online than in a black mode. It's a challenge. Maybe we'll have a solution to it in future.
Thank you, Dr. Azad.
I may add, what we did is we did not have it as a one single submission, that is for Prabhu Raghavan. So we had to split the assignment whereby we have multiple checkpoints. This basically means it's a more work for us, including the teaching team and the teaching assistants. But that's one way that we assured that they are not going off chart. And the other one is, because it was practice exercise, we allowed them to brainstorm and come up with team-based answers on Google Docs. That would be very helpful for you. Particularly, there's a lot of interesting tools with Microsoft Team and Microsoft OneNote. because for us, we had machine learning, which also involves a lot of mathematical formulas and derivation, particularly summation series and a few other learning formulas. So we found OneNote very useful for that.
Thank you. Thank you. There is another question that is regarding artificial intelligence, integration of AI into online learning and exams. Will it affect the students mentally? That is like lane discipline. We have to teach online discipline and etiquette as part of our curriculum.
See, I think it's a very subjective question. It depends on, that's why I said the onus is on the student as well as on the practitioner who is teaching. AI is only an enabler. It can never be a replacer, in my humble opinion.
Praveen, there are also questions in the chat window.
Okay.
Have you covered that, Praveen? It's again with respect to the online assessments.
Yeah, there is a question. Online assessments are not taken up by students seriously or rather sincerely. Is there any techniques to improve the quality of online tests? How to inculcate seriousness in terms of online tests and assessments? That's a question posted by Ms. Nagalakshmi. I invite any one of the panelists to answer this question.
I mean, just personal opinion, I think that students are more likely to take online assessments seriously when it is their only means of basically proving what they've learned. I think previously it might be that online assessments would have made up a very small percentage of their marks. Yes. I think in the new way of learning, or in the current semester, where it could account for 20%, 30%, 40% of their final marks, they will see it as just as serious as an in-person exam. And I think that it does bring with it its own challenges. That how do you guarantee the identity of the person who is taking that online exam? And I think that's something that many universities are looking at to ensure that, for example, the person taking the exam is the actual student rather than someone else they may have convinced to do so for them. But I think, yes, in terms of seriousness and in terms of the quality of online testing, I think that this is something that all universities do need to look at very carefully in terms of what methods they employ, and ensuring that it's fair to the students, that it's something that they're prepared for before they undertake it. It's not a matter of going into their exam and having to both adjust to what they're being asked to do as well as answer the questions or put forth their knowledge at that time.
There is one more question. Again, I think that is already answered. Whether the online degree is worth. Okay.
And this is Devasundari again. Actually, it's like, it's a very brilliant panel. It not only covered across the globe, it covered all the stakeholders' view, and also all of you gave the realistic scenario of what it is and how we can take it forward. In fact, when we started also, especially, online learning, when we went, we had to balance between the faculty, students, and their environment, and it was a big challenge for us. But at the end of this pandemic, if you say, all of us have come forth as a version 2.0, and I think it is on a positive note. In fact, all the students, faculty, and all of us have learned so much in this. And the one major point is, even this webinar was made possible because of this. We would not be thinking of all such virtual webinars and meetings happening. and at the same time, all the stakeholders, even industries and across universities coming forward to help each other, and more of a humanity has come into picture. And I think among the faculty, we personally feel that among the faculty, there is so much of unity now, and the students, they want to help each other. And, in fact, our students have developed some ventilators and such products to face the situation at every level, at each level, everybody wants to contribute for the situation. And it's a very brilliant panel. And in fact, all the, all of you covered the faculty's point, students' point, all the stakeholders' perspective were covered. And it was also across from countries. It was a very nice panel. And thank you for all the panelists. Kalaivanan, you.
Yeah.
I'll start with the oath of thanks, ma'am. So respected panelists and all the participants, it's my privilege to propose oath of thanks in the webinar session. On behalf of KCG, I, Dr. Kalaivanan Tirupati, Head International Affairs, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to honorable delegates who inspired us with their presence and took out the valuable time of your busy schedule. Also, I would like to extend a special thanks to Dr. Praveen Jo for hosting this webinar. Really, thanks you, Praveen Jo. And I also would like to express my gratitude to our principal, Dr. Prabhakaran, and Associate Dean, Dr. Devasundari, for providing the constant support and encouragement, especially Devasundari ma'am, special thanks for you. And as no program can become a successful with a single person, so I extend my big thanks to the placement officer, Mr. Pawan, and my fellow colleagues who helped me to organize this webinar. And finally, at last, thanks to Advice Consultancy for the timely support, one stop for all your international study needs. So, thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a nice day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. See you soon. Bye.